private lives, but we're going to kick off with the local election results because Nigel Farage's Reform Party has done very well so far in the elections, at least as where there are local elections taking place at all. So these figures will be slightly out of date now because these numbers are changing as we speak. But the Labour vote has declined quite a bit. But it's the Tory party which has been absolutely decimated. So 121 new seats for Reform in the local councils, 96 down the last time when we created these figures for the Tory party. Lib Dems have gained 12 seats, Labour are down 30, Independents are down 9 seats, and Greens are up 2. So that's the situation there. But Reform also won the Runcorn by-election. And so has another MP. Starmer called this a disappointing result, but he declared further and faster change as a result. And that's kind of hilarious because there's been zero policy change under Labour compared with the Tory policy agenda that we saw over the last number of years. Now, we have to remember that several parts of the country didn't hold any form of local election at all this year because of the constitutional vandalism which is taking place in this country. And this, but when I say that, I'm talking about it's the result of the English devolution white paper, which the British regime claims, quotes, sets out how the government plans to deliver on our manifesto pledge to transfer power out of Westminster through devolution and fix foundations of local government. But in reality, this is about transferring power into the hands of the Uber mayors like Sadiq Khan and Andy Burnham, who, as we know, are rapidly pursuing a net zero agenda amongst other globalist policies. And the argument for cancelling democracy in these areas is that there was no point holding an election when the authority that the election was for might be gone in a matter of a year or so, as they are transferred or recreated, remorphed into these unitary authorities and so on. So the counties where no elections were held were Norfolk, Suffolk, Essex, Thurrock, East Sussex, West Sussex, Hampshire, Isle of Wight, Surrey. And for its part, by the way, Plymouth held no election this year, but that was for a different reason because councillors in Plymouth are elected in thirds each year. So a third there's an election for a third of them each year, but it's for a 4-year term. And so every 4th year, there's no election as a result. But Plymouth is going to hold a referendum in July this year for an elected mayor. So, Mark, I don't know if you've got any comments on this, but this is a complete constitutional reform in this country. The role of the so-called elected mayors, and they're effectively dictators, as we've seen in London and Manchester, is something that you've been talking about for a long time because of this whole globalist policy over mayors. What are your thoughts?
Good morning, guys. Good morning from Tech. This localizes globalism. They themselves have called it globalism. And so by putting people that represent the globalist ideology in local offices, elections become superfluous because their whole ideology and philosophy looks well beyond the normal city municipal responsibilities and tries to embrace a global or worldwide consolidation perspective from the local level. So elections become passé, an anachronism to them. That's my initial thought.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. Thanks for that. Now, in fact, if you want to get some more background to this, have a look at the UK Column website. And if you just type in the search box elected mayor, there's a whole bunch of articles and news reports that we've been covering this for many years. Do have a look at that to get the background. But in the meantime, then the attack on jury trials, if we're talking about constitutional vandalism, the attack on jury trials continues. A year or so ago, the Times, which we must remember is a newspaper, set up what they call the Times. Oh, sorry, I do apologize. I've missed that one. Just bring that off. Yeah, thanks. The Times Commission on Justice and Courts. This was with a view to setting policy in the UK. And I've got to ask, is this the role of a newspaper to set policy in the UK? Anyway, they said it was set up to consider the future of policing and criminal justice system in the light of the knife crime crisis, a shoplifting epidemic and growing threat of cybercrime and concerns about the culture of the police. They also were talking about court backlogs and problems with legal aid and overflowing prisons. And now they published their final report a week or so ago, and they recommended a further reduction in jury trials in the UK, with cases instead being heard in what's being described as intermediate courts, with a judge sitting and alongside two magistrates. Now, crimes heard in these courts would include things like theft, drug possession, dangerous driving, fraud, and some forms of what they describe as non-serious assault. I'm not sure whether there is a non-serious assault, but anyway, the proposals are being backed by the government, along with 5 former Lord Chancellors and 2 former Lord Chief Justices. So here is Sarah Sackman, who's the Minister of State for Courts and Legal Services, saying, I think when former senior members of the judiciary, former Lord Chancellors, the Times, victims groups are clamouring for bold and radical changes, including an intermediate court, I think it's an idea whose time has probably come. She went on to say that the government would wait for Sir Brian Leveson's recommendations. Brian Leveson is looking into courts reform at all, and a very key part of that is the removal of the jury trial. And of course, that is important because juries have the right to annul bad legislation in certain circumstances. This is something that juries aren't generally told, but it is a dangerous thing and a major trampling of our rights to see juries, the option of a jury, removed from anybody. And we've got to remember we're supposedly innocent until proven guilty in this country. But anyway, let's move on. And